Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast would like to welcome Mr. John Moule, Warden at Radley College, Oxfordshire. Radley College describe themselves as profoundly traditional school, offering boys aged 13 to 18 an outstanding all-round education. Radley aims to instill in their pupils drive, ambition, confidence, kindness, loyalty, integrity, and a love for life. Radley is a full boarding school where every pupil is assigned one of 11 socials, which are houses, in which he will join a band of brothers who will have their back through thick and thin. These relationships contribute to the deep sense of community, spirit, and camaraderie across the college. John joined Radley College as warden in 2014 after several years as head at Bedford School, as well as roles as housemaster and head of history at Stowe and Dean Close schools. In his time at Radley so far, John has worked passionately to develop their scholarship and bursary schemes and partnerships. It's such a pleasure to have you with us, John.
Thanks for having me.
Radley is a proudly traditional school with a deep history. How did your background as a history teacher influence the decision to take on your role at Radley?
Well, I mean, obviously, I love my history, and therefore, anything about a traditional school like Radley is something I love the stories. I love the story of four men in a tea shop on a street in Oxford in March 1847, deciding they wanted to find a school, and then one of them describes in their diaries the fact that they came out in a horse and fly the following day and found this wonderful place called Radley Hall, which they then managed to rent and then buy, etc., etc. So I love the stories that go with schools like this. Of course, I do. But I guess I'm not sure it was as an historian I was attracted to come. But I guess as an historian, I always think one of the things that historians do is they try and understand the present through the eyes of the past. And so I think one of the things we would say about Radley is what we're trying to do, and you described us as proudly traditional, we are, but making sure we keep a balance of that with making sure we're relevant to the 21st century as well. So I think it's about foundations, it's about stories, it's about people, but it's also about learning from that to make sure we're the best school we can be today.
And for families who may be interested in joining Radley, what's your admissions process and what qualities is it that you're looking for in prospective pupils?
Well, the most important thing to say is that obviously it's a personalised process, I think, and it's really important that families engage with us and we with them, because these are big decisions. To send a boy boarding, to send them to a co-ed school or a single-sex school is a big question for people, and obviously we're single-sex. So there's lots of questions to ask, and we want very much to emphasise it's about a personalised process with our wonderful admissions team, with Sophie and Libby, and the team will help each family through that journey. It is about a variety of things. We're also a school that isn't about numbers on a piece of paper. Of course, the reference from ahead matters, performance in our tests matter, and the process tends to be that people look in year 5, are tested and interviewed in year 6, and then there's a conversation between then and after a place has been offered as to whether it's the right school, and that conversation continues until the boy arrives in a way. What are we looking for? In one sense, I always disappoint parents when they ask that question, because we're not looking for one thing. I don't want a school full of clones. I guess we're looking for boys that will cope with the pace of academic work at Radley. We're selective, we're not ruthlessly selective, but in one sense, a boy will need to be of a certain ability to thrive here. But at the same time, we're looking for somebody who is willing to throw themselves into a boarding community. I think that's probably the key characteristic. We like shy boys. Sometimes they're shy, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're academic, sometimes they're sporting, art, drama. We want a whole variety of boys from a whole variety of different backgrounds. That's something we're passionate about. But they need to be the sort of boy that we think will fit into a boarding community. And we need to think they'll throw themselves in and enjoy life in that context. So all sorts of boys, all sorts of backgrounds, with a desire to be part of a boarding community.
And at Radley, you're proud to maintain your tradition as an all-boys full boarding school with your chapel at the heart of college life. How do you balance the benefits of these traditions whilst also preparing your boys for the future and a world in which they're going to go into?
I think it's a great question, actually, and I think it's right at the heart of what I said earlier about what a good school is, because I think, in fact, a good institution is. We need to have firm foundations. We need to know what we are. We need to know what we believe in. And you mentioned Chapel. Chapel's part of that. We're a Christian foundation, but Chapel is very much the sort of community hub center of the college where everybody meets together. And that's about community. That's about togetherness. That's about, you mentioned a band of brothers earlier. I think that's something really important to us. And we love those traditions. And so boys are very protective of those traditions. But you're right, that's a balancing act. We're proud of that, and we don't think it's a false dichotomy to say those foundations are firm and the traditions are secure and we care about them. But at the same time, actually, we want to make sure that we're a school for the 21st century. So the way I sometimes think about that is if an old Radleyan is thinking about sending their son to Radley, when they come back, I want them to feel the school they loved on the one hand, so that the same things are there that they loved in their time, but also to feel a school that's actually thinking about life in the 21st century, life in 2026, preparing boys for the challenges of the world. So I hope the way we do education is right up to date and thoughtful and dynamic and modern and vibrant, but that it's built on the same foundations as it always was, and as Sewell and Singleton, the founders of the school, would have wanted it to be.
In a time when many schools are moving towards co-education and more flexible boarding options, how do you feel being single sex and full boarding benefits your boys at Radley?
I'm not a zealot, I would say to parents. I'm not a zealot for single-sex education. It's not the only way to educate, and obviously that's a big choice. In fact, what I say to parents is the first and foremost thing, I don't want you to send your son to Radley because it is a boys' school, but because it's the right school for your son. So that's an important thing to say. So it's not about zealotry in favor of one style of education, but why do I love full boarding? Full boarding we love because it's immersive. And of course, it's not for every family and it's not for every boy. But what it does is create a set of friendships, a set of relationships between boys, but actually between boys and staff as well, that is part of a lifestyle and a culture and a community that I think builds real depth. It obviously has the advantage of time. That's the great advantage of boarding. And the fact that we're full boarding, every boy is a boarder, means that actually the whole day is shaped to bring the best possible education for those boys. So we think full boarding is about relationships, community, and opportunity. And single sex, again, I'm not a zealot for it, but I do think there are some advantages. Boys stay a bit younger for longer. We can make sure that everything we do is focused on boys. So our expertise is in boys and our budget is for boys, as it were. And some of the obvious advantages we think alongside boys staying younger for longer is, ironically, I think they actually have more opportunity to be themselves. So because you don't have the gender stereotyping that can unfortunately exist in a co-ed school, some things are regarded as boys' things, some things are regarded as girls' things. And of course, that's rubbish. And in our context, it's not an issue because all the students are boys. So in that sense, a boy singing or a boy playing the flute alongside playing rugby or whatever it might be is something that's just very normal to us. So I think boys stay younger for longer. I think they probably have the opportunity to be themselves more. And if there are differences between the way in which boys learn and the way in which girls learn, and of course there's a dangerous stereotyping there, we are able to focus on boys in terms of material that we study, the way that we study it. I think there are huge advantages. That has to be offset. And of course, we have to recognize there's a world out there which isn't full boarding and isn't single sex. But our relationships with girls' schools, the various events we do academically, culturally, socially with girls' schools, we hope offsets that well. So I hope we have the advantages of single sex and full boarding, but not in a way that isolates them from the real world, so that we think our 18-year-old is as well prepared for that world as any student from any good school.
Your funded places programme at Radley is incredibly successful. In fact, we were talking to you about it recently, with over 4 million a year spent on supporting talented and ambitious boys, which is an incredible amount, it has to be said. Could you tell us more about the importance of this programme and how your whole school community benefits?
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning it in that way. I mean, we're very proud of what we've done. We've expanded it. It's been the centerpiece of what we've tried to do in my time at Radley. And as you said earlier, I've been here 12 years, and we've seen that program expand dramatically in that time. And I think that's a tribute to the way in which we thought strategically. So I think council have seen this, our governing body have seen this as a strategic thing. And why do I think it matters? Well, of course, on one level, it matters because it gives opportunity to boys who otherwise wouldn't have them, and therefore it's transformational for them. And the impact a single bursary, a single what we call funded place, a single funded place can have in terms of what that boy does as he becomes a young man here at the college, but then obviously beyond, it is huge. It also fits in with our founder's vision. I mean, actually, our founder, they said in that very conversation in a street in Oxford, they said they'd love 10% of the school to be here for free. We've never got anywhere near that, but they had that as a vision. We're now beginning to progress towards that, which is fantastic. But I think the thing I care about most is actually not just transforming the individual lives of boys, but the impact that they bring to the rest of the college. So I always think the way I think about it is if a boy's in my study or a senior colleague study being interviewed for a place at Radley, and we think Radley will be great for them, but actually they'll be great for Radley with the character they bring, the experience that they bring, the talent that they bring. That's going to make the college a better place. Then of course we want to be able to bring them here. So I think what we've done is we've been very open about that. I think we've built it into our DNA. It's not a charitable add-on. Of course, it's part of what our charitable objects are about, but it's not done for the sake of ticking a box. It's done fundamentally to make the school as good a place as it possibly can be. So, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I had a senior prefect who was a sort of very standard, as it were, Radley boy in background, and a second prefect who was a son of a refugee. And I remember the two of them talking to the two of them about their own different backgrounds and how they interacted well. And obviously they were fantastic boys as number 1 and 2 in the school. That was just a small illustration of what I care about, which is making Radley College as interesting a place as it can be for everybody by virtue of being able to give funded places.
You also offer the Radley Keys Award, an all-inclusive scholarship programme for boys from state schools who would not otherwise be able to consider an independent education. Do you want to tell us how you identify these candidates for the award and give us perhaps some example of the transformational impact it has?
Yeah, so I think, I think what we're trying to do is offer some obviously part-funded places because we think it's important to support people that can afford some element of private education, but not necessarily the full boarding fee. But equally, we want to absolutely focus as well on the disadvantage. And we felt the branding distinction was important. Important, I think, because we need to overcome certain barriers to help families think Radley might be for them. And so, it's not necessarily an easy thing to access an education like this. So we want to make sure that those barriers are broken down in the way that we test, in the way that we welcome family to the environment to look at us, in the way that we talk to them. So that's what the Keys Award is about. We do a little bit of advertising, we do a little bit of social media work, we have connections with certain schools, certain areas, certain organisations and there'll also be word of mouth that brings candidates to us. And so there'll be a variety of ways in which where they're identified to come and have a look at it. And we're proud of the fact that now, I think the first time we did an open day, we sort of had 10 families. I think last year we had 100. So in that sense, it's exciting what we can do. And they can bring transformational characters to the school. I remember one boy who was a Polish boy, whose family very typically had moved from Eastern Europe. Firstly, the dad to a construction job, and then the family followed. He didn't speak any English. He applied to a local grammar school. They said he couldn't come in because his English wasn't good enough. I think he was 11 at the time. He worked really hard. At 13, he went to that grammar school. And then at 16, he himself, nothing to do with his family, had just heard about these schools. So he wrote to us, and we were the only school to reply to him. And he came for an interview with his older brother. And he was a transformational presence in the school for 2 years. And then his younger brother, who was 4 or 5 years younger, 5 years younger than he was, came for the full 5 years. And those two boys, you put the accumulation of their achievements, but also their characters, what they brought to the college over the cumulative 7 years that they were with, and also the welcome to the family as part of that as well. So the story is a great story. And it's a great story for them individually, and I could give you countless examples of that. But I also want to remember when I talk about things like that is that it's actually the impact on other boys around them as well. So that older boy, for example, set up he wanted to do something charitable in reflection of the fact he'd been fortunate himself, and he and a few friends set up a charity to set up a school to help raise funds to build a school in Uganda. And that's just one example of the transformative effect of awards like this. But you see it in little ways every day. You see it in conversations that just are culturally richer or sort of socioeconomically more aware. And boys are much better than sometimes we give them credit for being tolerant and open to each other. Sometimes we as adults aren't very good at it. Boys, I think, are much better at it, and that's what makes the college a more interesting place as a result of these awards.
I'm just aware that when we saw you recently, there has been some planning to help support these children through the selling of land. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. I mean, I guess not many schools can be as fortunate as me. I was very lucky that when I arrived at Radley, so I came in 2014. After I'd been appointed, I was here. I remember one summer's day, I was just here talking to the bursar and the estates bursar when a letter came in from the local authority saying we're identifying areas of land for development. Would you be interested in that? So we're fortunate, A, because governors back in the day purchased land locally. That was might have seemed a silly investment at the time, but it proved an absolutely amazing investment for Radley. And also judiciously, because we care about the environment, we care about our local, our own green belt, as it were. We care about the rural campus nature of the school, but we've been fortunate enough to be able to sell 2 tranches of land, and that's helped our endowment fund, and all the income from that endowment fund goes towards supporting funded places, which again, I think reflects the strategic planning of governors with the executive team to see this as hugely important. So our endowment has obviously grown as a result of that. It's not the only source of funding. The fundraising team and the development office do a fantastic job, and again, funded places are at the heart of that strategy as well. So over 12 years, we've done well, and we're fortunate, I appreciate, to have done well in order to be able to build up an endowment fund that will support funded places for many years to come.
That's wonderful. You are also part of the Radley Schools group, which includes Barfield, Beeston Hall, Shandlings, Cothill, Kitebrook, Maiden Hall, and West Hill Park. Could you tell us more about these partnerships and how the Radley community, as well as pupils at partner schools, benefit from the
Well,
from the group?
you'll know, Chloe, it's a challenging time, changing time in the sector. And we decided it was something we wanted to get involved in. And I think we decided that for a variety of reasons. And an opportunity arose to take over a group of schools that was already existing as a group. It used to be called the Prep Schools Trust. And so that's a charitable merger. So all those 7 schools become part of Radley College. So in that sense, we own and run 8 schools now, Radley College, plus the 7 prep schools that you mentioned. And it's an exciting venture. We're a year in, and we want to do a variety of things with that. Particularly, I think, give a positive voice within the sector for the sort of education we offer. They're very different schools with different marketplaces, and we very much want them to be independent in that context. Of course, they're now part of Radley College, Radley Schools Group, but they want them to be their own version of themselves in their own local context. But we want to be there to help and support them in doing so. And already a year in, we've seen, I think, real benefit for them, but also for us as we talk to each other about education, as we hopefully give a louder voice for the sort of education we believe in. And that's the vision, a positive, I think, in a world which is understandably incredibly defensive about private education at the moment. I think we're all looking to defend ourselves against challenges that are coming. I think that's right. But at the same time, I think we also need to remember to be positive about the sort of education we're offering. So we need a successful prep school sector in order for Radley College to thrive. And therefore, we felt that for us to be involved in that would be a statement of support for that sector, and also an exciting opportunity for us to learn through that process.
And for parents listening, if their children are at those prep schools, is it a natural feed through to Radley, or are they? It's not a guaranteed
It's certainly not a
pathway.
guarantee, so it doesn't change the process. I mean, in one sense, I hope that a connection or a knowledge of Radley might make parents more interested in thinking about their sons coming. But of course, the model of Radley is we have 150 boys joining, and therefore, and obviously, full boarding is not for everybody, and obviously, we only offer place to boys as well. So, in that sense, we rely on 50 or 60 schools sending 1 or 2 boys each. In order for our model to work. So while it might be that 1 or 2 more might come from those schools, that is not the purpose of what we're about, and certainly it doesn't change the admission process. So for parents of boys at other schools, they shouldn't worry at all that they're being in any way disadvantaged by virtue of being at the school that they're at. So I think unlike some schools where, again, understandably, their mergers have been about pipeline and feed, that tends to have been a pipeline and feed for day pupils from the local area for those schools. As is a model which is much more about education in general and support for the prep school sector and the type of education we offer.
In your welcome on the school's website, you state, "We will embrace the challenges and opportunities of sustainability and digital change." It's obviously a huge topic. We've got the development and AI increasingly surrounding us. How are you facing these challenges within school, and how does framing these issues as both challenges and opportunities help to equip your pupils with key skills such as resilience?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much covers everything, doesn't it? If we're thinking about the challenge of sustainability issues and the challenge of technology, we're pretty much covering most of the challenges of the world. So, I mean, it's incumbent on us as a school, I think, on any school to think about that and its strategic planning and in what it does to prepare their students for the world beyond. I think on both those issues, actually, we want to both be innovative, but also mindful of the challenges that we face. I worry about an agenda that sort of demonizes technology. I worry about an agenda that sort of embraces every new fad in the world of sustainability. I think actually thinking carefully and thoughtfully about these issues is both good for us as an institution so that we don't jump to extremes, but equally it's good for our boys because I think what they need to understand are those two words, challenge and opportunity. So there is undoubtedly a challenge, but I don't want to present, that's one of my themes, I don't want to present life to boys as a crisis. I think sometimes the world in which we live is forever saying this is a crisis, this is a crisis, this is a crisis. You end up with actually a danger, almost perhaps to exaggerate it slightly, of nihilism amongst young people. That they don't, what's the point? Because everything is so awful and dreadful. So what we want to say is, look, these are the challenges the world's about. How we're going to help you begin to understand them, be aware of them, and embrace them, and develop the adaptability for the future. So on both those issues, I hope we're active. Sustainability, we're just about to build a solar farm, which will provide about 60% of our electricity over time. It's an exciting new project that we've just signed off. And on digital, we do a huge amount of thinking. I think on digital, parents ask about it all the time. Of course they do. And it's a huge national debate about social media, et cetera, and bans and censorship, et cetera. I always say when parents ask me the question, what are you doing with AI and digital? I always say, I don't know. Because I think the starting point needs to be, we're not sure about this. We're not the expert. We're all learning together. And I think it's really important to say that. So I try and strike a middle ground of saying we should always be talking about it. We should always be questioning what we do, thinking about our policies, changing them accordingly, and reacting. But always reacting, seeing the advantages, talking to boys about the way in which they can use AI to create really good results, help them revision. At the same time, talking to them about the fact that they're tempted to cheat on their prep with AI. So it's challenges and opportunities all the time. What are the dangers? What are the benefits? What's the world they're moving into? Let's be realistic about that. Let's be optimistic about that. And hopefully that's the mindset that we have on both those issues in all their applications.
I think it's so fast changing. I think it's almost impossible to stay ahead. I think we're all kind of trying to catch up constantly with the different
I guess what
things.
we mustn't lose, perhaps to say one more thing, what we mustn't lose is foundations. So when you talk about resilience and you talk about all the skills that the 21st century needs, resilience being one, collaboration being another, imagination, flexibility, adaptability, we don't know what the world's going to be. I actually think, well, isn't that what boarding's always been about? Good quality boarding has been about creating characters of depth and nuance. So I think one of the best things about boarding is something you almost can't say about it, which is actually learning how to get on with people. Sometimes that's not easy. And so I hope in my more optimistic moments that boarding will see a sort of revival and a resurgence actually on two issues. One, because I think it offers community in an age where digital leads to isolation. And so I think there's a community feel about a boarding school, which is fantastic. But the other thing is it actually offers all the fundamental human skills and qualities that we know the world will always need, even though we don't quite know how the world will need them in a world of AI and digital. So I actually think it's quite exciting to be in charge of a boarding school at a time where the qualities that boarding schools have always produced are more needed than ever.
Radley College has a very successful futures programme, which not only results in excellent university destinations, but also offers opportunities such as the mini MBA, the entrepreneurship curriculum, and it's supported by many opportunities to collaborate with old Radleyans. What are the benefits of offering this wide range of opportunities to students, considering their futures, and how does the old Radleyan community support this? Obviously, this is coming from the fact that I think increasingly parents are not just looking at the A-level results or IB results and the university choices. I think we're all becoming increasingly aware that employability and being able to survive in a fast changing world is very much a skill set that we need to be preparing the children for.
I'd probably say, before talking about that directly, I'd say a sort of couple of almost not caveat points, but almost sort of like foundational points before that. Just re-emphasizing what I just said, which is we must remember that actually the qualities and characters of good human beings are still very, very important in the world in which we move into. Actually, arguably in a world which is much less formulaic and much less predictable, I think actually those skills are even more important. So I think the sort of values-based sort of fundamental characteristics of decency, kindness, compassion, humanity matter more than ever they did, or certainly as much as they ever did. And therefore, we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think sometimes there might be a slight danger in modern education that we do that. My second sort of similar point would be, although utilitarian purposes of education matter, and I'll come back to those in a moment in terms of futures and career preparation and skill acquisition, I think also we need to remember that education is about more than that. It's about culture. It's about truth and beauty and goodness. And so I always want to say both those things, because I think there's a danger that we lose sight of the fundamental underpinning foundations of what makes a good culture and what therefore makes a good school. But of course, we have to be preparing them for the real world as it is, and that is unpredictable. We're incredibly fortunate with the network we have. We don't want that to feel in any way like an old boys network, in the sense of this gives you a sort of free pass into life. What we want it to do is it gives you a supportive community that will assist you and advise you and help you and guide you. That's not just all Radleyans, actually. Every parent, as they arrive, become part of the Radleyan society. And so that will be all current parents, all past parents, as well as all old Radleyans. And what we want to use is their expertise. We want to use their time. And so that might be somebody comes to us and says, look, I'm really interested in doing a certain career, and we'll put them in touch with somebody for a conversation to give them advice and guidance. It might be a networking event in London with a particular focus on the creative arts or on law or on AI, all of which we've done recently, where a whole group of people ranging across the ages, from boys currently at school through to experts in their field who are very experienced, will meet together to have a networking evening. It could be evenings where just a whole number of people from the community with various career experiences come in, speak to a group of boys, and it's almost like a speed dating where boys will go around just find a little bit out. And what I want to do, I think, is just open boys' minds and introduce them to a community where they can seek and gain help, and for that to be part of their Radley DNA. So they will get access to that age 15, 16, 17, 18. But actually what matters more is that they feel part of that as they go through university and beyond. So lots of opportunities here while they're at school, but connected to a community that can provide that guidance and support and insight and help actually throughout their lives. And that's what being a member of a school like this should be. It should be about sort of lifelong learning. We've got an event, an exciting event in about 2 weeks' time, which is a Dragon's Den. We've never done that. We're doing that. So a group of old Radleyans and some parents actually coming back. They've come and done sessions with boys. We've whittled it down to a group of finalists. And so a group of finalists will be pitching. I don't actually know, I haven't seen their pitches yet, but what they'll be pitching for. But we'll put some money into that. And so they will actually get some money to sort of start a business, a small fledgling business with some advice, actually, as a part of that. So that's just an example of the many things we're trying to do to prepare boys for that world.
And finally, what are your hopes and plans for the future at Radley College?
Well, my hopes are that government would get out of the way and let us do our job, but that's probably a little bit political, because I just think schools like this are about excellence, and that's what we just want to get on with trying to provide. So my hope is that we will be able to continue doing what we are doing. I'm very proud of what we are doing, and I'm very proud of what we managed to achieve over the last few years. I think going back to the schools group, I very much hope that the Radley, hopefully a distinctive Radley way of doing education will become a little bit of a louder voice. But what I really always hope for is in July every year, we turn out 150, 160 young men that will actually go into the world and be decent people and make a difference. We don't really care what they do, and we don't care where they do it. Some will be famous, some won't be. But we just hope that that's what we continue to do. So I always say to parents that, of course, I have to think about all the big strategic stuff. But fundamentally, what our job is to look after their sons day by day and work in partnership with parents to create the best version of themselves over 5 years. Through some bumps, no doubt. But as they leave, I think that's what our job is. And so we can be highfalutin, strategic and political and socioeconomic and talk about digital, but actually what I think Radley College should always care most about is producing 160 decent young men every year.
Thank you so much, John, for coming on our podcast and sharing so much about Radley College. And I'm sure many parents are going to, I know many parents are very keen to hear what you have to say.
Our pleasure, Chloe. Thank you. Lovely to see you recently, and thank you very much for this opportunity.